One of the things I've really loved about my time with the Brahma Kumaris is that we learn to have our own connection with God, my link with the Supreme, the one that's incorporeal. And because of that, we don't really worship any human being. That doesn't mean that we don't have great respect for people, or we take inspiration. We do take inspiration from the lives of others. And one of those people for me was Didi Manmohini. And Didi Manmohini, as she was known, began with the organization in the 1930s in Sindh. And right from the beginning, she was a very yogi personality. And when the founding father passed away in 1969, Didi Manmohini was appointed along with Dadi Prakashmani as the heads of the organization, both of them together. And they were really the first women to head up the Brahma Kumaris, which is now the largest organization, spiritual organization in the world, run by women, a very impressive thing. And Didi Manmohini was really the first of these women to be the administrative head of the organization. And I first met her in 1975. I began my spiritual journey with the Brahma Kumaris in London, and after a few months, I was invited to visit the headquarters in Mount Abu. And I remember very clearly, I flew to Bombay. I was met at the airport, and from the airport, I went straight to a public event because Didi Manmohini was in Bombay at the time. And when I met her, instantly, I was so touched by her eyes. Her eyes just sparkled with love and joy, but also, I would say, strength or spiritual power. And after the event, we went to a center in Bombay for dinner, and she sat me beside her. And I can remember she was eating, and she would take a bit of food, eat it, and then she'd put it on my plate. She'd take a bit. And really, it was so unique for me to experience that. But her generosity and her sense of love for others was absolutely palpable. And then for many years I would travel to Mount Abu where she was based, because she was based in the headquarters. And what I loved was her humility. She was the head of this organization, and yet every morning she would sit in the class and listen to the morning class that the Brahma Kumaris have every day all over the world. She sat like any student. And really I found she never expected special privileges or felt, I'm better. And that humility in leadership is something which is incredibly powerful. And once I remember we had an event in Delhi. There was a big conference that the Brahma Kumaris put on. And we had some guests from around the world, and one of them was a scientist from London. He was a lovely person, and he was just dabbling in spirituality, but he had a lot of questions because he came from a scientific perspective. And I remember we traveled on a bus from Delhi up to Mount Abu. If my memory serves me right, it took us about 24 hours. And on the way, he would be sitting with somebody, he'd ask them questions, and when he dried them up, he'd go to the next person. When he dried them up, he went to the next person. By the time we got to Mount Abu, he'd covered the whole bus. He had so many questions, and very good ones. And we thought, what are we going to do with this person? How can we help him move out of questions into an experience? And we took him to meet Didi Manmohini, and when she would meet anybody, she would meet them through the eyes. We call it the drishti. The soul conscious, when you're in a soul conscious state, that vibration radiates through the eyes. So she met him through the eyes. And in 2 minutes, he had the experience of being like an eternal soul, an immortal soul, a non-physical being. He had such a powerful experience, and all his questions then finished because he had experience for himself. And this was the power of Didi Manmohini. She was such a natural yogi that her own experience could be conveyed to others. And really, in those days when someone couldn't meditate, they would often take them to meet Didi Manmohini. And then in 1980, she was invited to visit America. And I was also invited to travel with her, which was a real privilege for me. And anyway, I went first to New York, and we did a big program in the Indian Embassy in New York. And that was something which was really special because Didi had a lot of dignity, and people really felt they were meeting a great yogi from India, and a woman at that too. And then we went to San Francisco, and unfortunately her health was not good at that time. And she was invited to the Langley Porter Institute at the University of California at San Francisco. And this was one of the first institutes in the world that was really studying meditation and the effect of meditation on the mind and the body. And she was going to be a special guest. They wanted to study her vibrations, what gave her that mental power that she had. But unfortunately, she wasn't well enough to go. So she said, "Charlie, you go." So I went in her place. But what really touched me was she had such good wishes. She had such good wishes for me. Even though I was so new, she had developed such a faith and regard in me as she did in everyone around her. We then even flew on to London, but she was still unwell in London. And once again, she had some programs in Scotland, and she had to cancel her trip, and she sent me to go to Scotland. And I just found that the incredible humility, and her feeling was, it doesn't have to be me. Everyone is God's instrument, and God can work through anyone and give an experience to anyone. So really, her greatness, I found, was quite extraordinary. And in 1983, she was not well, and she had to go and have an operation. And all the Brahma Kumaris all over the world had a lot of love for Didi because of her love, her spiritual power, her humility, and her deep, deep love for God. And so we sat in meditation to give the soul power, but the soul left the body. The soul flew. And I can remember I had a phone call in the middle of the night that Didi Manmohini had left the body, and for everyone to continue to sit in meditation. And it was such a lovely feeling that all over the world we sat in meditation, not to worship Didi, but to send this incredibly pure feelings for a great soul who had left her body, and good wishes for her next birth. And this is something which I've really learned in the Brahma Kumaris, that when someone passes on, that we really have these deep good wishes for the soul, that they will take a good birth. Didi Manmohini has left a memorial in my heart, firstly because of her extraordinarily deep love for God that made her such a powerful person, but also because of her great humility. You know, she was such a great person, but she would meet anyone like a sister or a brother with so much love and so much respect. And so in this month of July, we are not worshipping her, but we're remembering her qualities to inspire all of us on our own spiritual journey. So it's really been special for me to be able to share some of my experiences with Didi Manmohini. Thank you. Om Shanti.